Okay, I guess I should ask you really quick. I kind of threw my notes just in there randomly where they felt like they like applied based on what you had in there.
Yeah,
I feel like we can just flow with it. And just if you've noticed something that we talk about, and I'll do the same, we can just gray it out.
cool.
Uh, okay, cool. Let me zoom this in real quick.
And we can talk about maybe our intro is, hey, this topic came up because we've had a couple clients this week panic when they see the scale, like, oh no, I'm not losing weight fast enough. So we can say, like, okay, this topic was inspired by us showing other people their before and afters and having them guess because people thought that they were losing 10, 15 pounds and they were actually the same weight. Like kind of go off of that as our intro.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right. Hey guys, what is up? And welcome back to this episode of Reality Check. So today's topic is fun, and I feel like most of the topics or things that we end up talking about as coaches, but specifically on this podcast, are topics that come up with our clients or just women that we're talking to in the space. And this topic today specifically was about clients who get really caught up in the scale and they have a hard time seeing the progress that they are actually making just because they're so focused on the number, which is definitely not uncommon, right? I feel like that's what most people are using as their marker, right? Or their data to determine, am I making progress or am I not? Which we'll talk about why that's not effective and other ways to do that. But really the title of the episode is your ideal body heavier than you think? And I want to talk about it. But before we get into muscle and fat loss and weight loss and all the things, we wanted to talk first about just scale fluctuations and normal human biology things to be aware of before you venture further down that path of relying on the scale. So I know we have a big list here, but for me personally, I know that I could see like anywhere from 1 to I don't know, even 5 pounds like fluctuations on the scale on a day-to-day basis. I know that I can be pretty sensitive to sodium and cycle and all those things. So we're just going to kind of walk through like a list of things that you should take into consideration when it comes to those daily fluctuations. So first of all, those fluctuations are very normal, especially if you have clothes on or not, obviously. Morning to nighttime, have you eaten breakfast yet? Have you gone to the bathroom yet? All of those things, right? So typically for clients, when we have them do their check-in process when they weigh in, and this is definitely could go into a whole nother topic, but we have them weigh in, same time every morning, same amount of clothes that they're on after they go to the bathroom if they can. And those are kind of the instructions that we give to get a good, consistent amount of data. Now, a client could check in every Monday, and on Sunday last week, they could have had sushi and been traveling for hours and not had enough water. And then this week, they could have not been traveling and had a normal amount of sodium, right? And those could be two completely different weigh-ins. So even as a coach, week over week, we're not just looking at, oh, she was this weight last week and she's up 3 pounds this week, so something's wrong, right? So it's also important to know that you could see those fluctuations, and the only way that you can normalize them is to weigh in every day and see how your body responds to things, or not weigh at all and stop using it completely, right? And have a lesser attachment to it. But with for females, cycle specifically is a big one, right? For water retention, all of those things, and just normal fluctuations. But it really comes down to water and sodium and inflammation, right? In response to the things that you're doing or the things that are going on in your body. Um, Jess, what do you typically do? Like, obviously, I know we approach this on an individual basis with clients, but like, what do you prefer for weigh-ins, like week over week, daily, depending on what phase they're in, right? Like, I know we obviously all take different approaches to that.
So yeah, it totally depends on the person. And my perspective on this has changed quite a bit because I've seen a method that I used to think was maybe not healthy. I've seen it work really well to actually unwind people's unhealthy relationships with the scale. So um, I used to have people weigh in far less frequently or not at all if they had an unhealthy relationship with the scale, if they were becoming obsessive about it, if they would panic anytime the scale went up a pound. Again, scale fluctuations are very normal. So that's not a marker of something unhealthy if your weight goes up a pound or two, regardless of your inputs. So I also always am reiterating to clients, like the things to get excited about are going to be your wins and your inputs, not your results. Okay. The results are going to come as a side effect over time. And I promise if we're doing the right inputs, those results will be desirable. But if we're only obsessed with the outcomes and not paying attention to the inputs, it's just a bad cycle mentally. So I used to have people weigh in maybe once every 4 or 6 weeks and just really focus on how their clothes fit and inches. I have since changed my perspective on this. And I think one of the reasons that steered away from this in the past is because I had worked with several clients who had eating disorders in the past. And I didn't want to promote them checking the scale frequently, right?
Mhm.
But here's what we've found has worked is I have a lot of clients and I don't have them do this forever. I'll have them do it for a month, but I'll have them weigh in every single day so that they start to see trends and they start to look at data as data rather than an end all be all association of their worth or their health. And usually what happens is after a couple weeks, the client is telling me, oh, well, my scale went up, but it's because I had a lot of sodium last night because we went out to McDonald's after baseball or something. Or the client is telling me, hey, I actually did 4 really heavy lifts this week and it was a new program. So I know my body is inflamed and I'm storing more glycogen. And I'm like, whoa, the client is telling me why their weight went up. And it's completely data driven now. They're not getting emotional about it at all. So that's my preferred method. Again, I still have some clients who don't weigh in at all if they're not ready for that. But that's my preferred method. And then we ease away from that. Now that they understand that it can fluctuate and that that's normal, we just do a weekly weigh in and we look at trends over time. Again, we're not only looking at weight, we're also looking at inches and how are we feeling and how are our clothes fitting.
Right.
Because weight in itself is not an indicator of health.
Right. Yeah. And obviously that's the purpose of this episode and what we're going to dive into further. But I agree that there's definitely a time and a place. Like there are definitely clients who are very triggered by the scale. And I might, as a coach, think like, let's pause on that for a second and step away. And I also might go in the opposite direction and say, hey, weigh in every day for the next 2 weeks and let's like talk through this. So I think it's so dependent on the client and the history and all of those things. But also, like you said, it's like we absolutely coach without the use of the scale, and we can because it's just one small piece of data. And there is so much, there's so many other things that we are looking at outside of just the scale to determine what direction we're moving, rate of progress, all of that, right? Like if something needs to be changed. But those normal fluctuations that you might see come down to your cycle. Sodium, whether it's a lot or not enough, same with water, a lot or not enough. Creatine can cause some water retention. My body's pretty sensitive to that, but I know some people don't notice any change in it. Stress and lack of sleep can absolutely contribute to some higher numbers you might see on the scale. Sickness, right? Just being sick and being probably dehydrated, inflamed, out of your normal eating routine, maybe not eating enough to even go to the bathroom, right? The regular bowel movements is another one. Also, I'll have somebody who weighs in and they're freaking out about the scale, but in reality, they were like, oh, I was traveling last night and I got home and I couldn't eat until midnight. I'm like, okay, so you normally eat dinner at 6, but last night you ate dinner 6 hours later and then you weighed in at 6 a.m. this morning. There is literally just more food inside of your body right now, right? Like there's so many like little things you have to think about to neutralize the relationship with the scale and zoom out and be a little bit more objective of that one data marker too.
And all of those things that Jill just mentioned are not body fat.
Right.
So body fat is the tissue that is, if we have it in excess, it becomes unhealthy. Storing water is not a problem. Creatine, I know women will freak out and be like, oh no, I gained 2 pounds because I have creatine. That is intramuscular water. That is
Right.
not going to make you look chunky or bloated, right? Like all of this stuff is not body fat. I want to be very clear. It's not the same thing. So there's not a need to panic over that. Okay, so let's segue into weight versus body composition. A lot of people look at weight as the end all be all marker to health, and it is just so wrong. So I want to shift it up and say weight loss or gain is not good or bad. The type of weight loss or gain could be good or bad. We can gain good weight, or we could gain bad. I'm putting good and bad in air quotes, but like
Right.
healthy versus less healthy weight, right? Some people need more body fat for their health because they are undernourishing their bodies, right? But there is an appropriate ratio of muscle mass to body fat for a really healthy body. And oftentimes, women are under muscled. So we don't have enough muscle on our structure. Um, and that actually can lead to less desirable health outcomes. So just simply by adding muscle mass, adding this healthy tissue to our body, which takes up weight, muscle weighs something, even though it doesn't take up a lot of space, it
Yeah.
does weigh something. A lot of times we can actually improve people's health markers just by adding muscle before we even get to weight loss.
Yep. Yeah. And, this is something that I think we are so conditioned to believe over years and years and years of this, eat less, move more being shoved down women's throats, and 1,200 calories being spit out to people as a recommendation from apps and MyFitnessPal and doctors and generic programs and all of these things. But it's really important to know that smaller doesn't mean healthier. And when you're pursuing weight loss without the effort to build or maintain muscle mass, you're actually reducing the efficiency of your metabolism, right? You could potentially be increasing your body fat percentage overall, right? Because you are losing the muscle tissue, like Jess was talking about, in terms of the like appropriate ratios. And you could potentially just becoming a smaller version of the version of you that you're not even happy with, right? And there's a difference between fat loss and weight loss that I think is also an important conversation, and something that we talk about a lot when it pertains to muscle. But I think weight loss is typically most women's priority, right? Especially in their adult life. And so many people spend years or the majority of their lives dieting, but weight loss is typically the priority. And it's usually at the expense of our health and not because of it, right? Like, I don't hear many women coming to me and saying, I want to lose weight because I want to be healthier, I want to be stronger. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it absolutely does. But most of the time, women are saying, I want to lose weight because I don't like the way my clothes fit. I want to feel more confident, which is totally okay too, right? Like, it's okay to have those goals also, but it's not okay to have a goal of weight loss at the expense of your health and saying, I'll worry about that later, right? So I
And
just think
also, if you are striving for physique goals, doing this in the healthier way is going to get you that better physique that you actually are desiring.
right.
Versus, like Jill said, like a smaller version of yourself without tone and shape and looking lean, right? Like the muscle underneath is what gives us that tone.
Right.
So I want to give like number examples just to, because I think that this is a really hard concept to understand. Um, I would be happier if a client was the exact same weight, but they lost 10 pounds of fat and gained 10 pounds of muscle. If that happened in that scenario, this person is going to look entirely different than they did at the same weight with added fat and less muscle. Versus if a client lost 15 pounds and 10 pounds of it is muscle and or 10 pounds is fat, just like in the other scenario, but they also lost 5 pounds of muscle. So this person is now down 15 pounds. They feel great because they see that number on the scale. They are going to look less fit and they are going to have lesser health markers than the person who lost that same amount of pounds of fat but actually
Yeah.
put on muscle. So yeah, the scale can be deceiving in that way, and that's why it's important to use other metrics. So um, in terms of inches and what you can expect and other markers you can look for, because you might be like, well, how do I know if I'm doing the right things if my weight's the same? If you are gaining muscle, your body isn't really going to change a whole lot. Okay. So you'll probably feel stronger. You might feel you're going to be able to lift a little bit heavier. You might notice, like, oh, I see definition on a muscle that I've never seen before. But your size isn't really going to change, which is wild, right? You could put on, and it takes a long time. It might take you a whole year to put on 10 pounds of muscle. But if somebody puts on 10 pounds of muscle, you're not really going to look that different and your inches aren't going to fluctuate a whole lot.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you are losing or gaining body fat, you're going to know based on your inches. Okay. So if we lose body fat, we know based on our inches. So another good thing you could look for, if you are losing weight and your inches aren't really going down, that's kind of problematic. That's a good sign you might be losing a lot of muscle mass along with your weight. So while we are encouraging clients to transform their physiques, we are always, whether they are in a muscle building phase or a fat loss phase, they always need to be eating enough protein and strength training consistently and progressively overloading, because without the protein and the progressive overload of lifting, you will lose that muscle mass. And the muscle mass is really, really healthy for us.
I actually had someone ask me, they DM'd me recently, and she's someone that pops up in my DMs, every few months. She'll kind of share like what she's doing and what she's working on, and that she's learned a lot from us, and it's all good stuff, right? But she actually asked me, should she stop lifting through the rest of her deficit? And I said, why are you asking me that? And she said, because I know that I can't build muscle in a deficit right now. And I was like, you have to
You
keep
have to
lifting.
maintain it. You have to
You have to,
maintain it.
right. So I kind of went through that with her, and she was like, okay, she was like, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. That makes sense. And she was already doing, strength training 3 to 4 days a week and all that. So she was in a good spot, but her brain went there for a second of like, is there a point in me doing this, or why am I doing this? Right. Because she just wanted to see the scale go down faster. And she wanted to like, okay, let me shift to cardio. And I'm like, no, cardio is not your fat loss solution. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. So it was interesting to hear someone's brain go in that direction, because I don't think I had ever been asked that question, but
And
more
it works
muscle.
in the other direction as well. So
Yeah.
anytime you are in a fat loss phase, meaning a caloric deficit, let's say you're cutting calories, you're dieting. Anytime you're in a caloric deficit, your goal is to maintain as much muscle as possible, because
Yes.
your body needs to take that energy from somewhere. So we would like for it to be coming from fat cells, right? A lot of times, if we're not doing it in the right way, it's going to take it from fat and it's going to take some from muscle. So we're hanging on to muscle as much as we can during that deficit
Which
through
is why.
protein and strength training. Yep.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
we are in a build phase, trying to build muscle, and this is where I have a beef with bodybuilders who are like dirty bulking. They eat
Oh,
whatever they want
yeah.
during the winter. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Our goal during a muscle building phase is to build as much muscle as possible with as little additional fat as possible. Okay. So that's done through you're increasing your calories, you're still strength training, you're still eating enough protein, but you're eating really healthy foods with that increase in calories. We're not just eating whatever we want and going balls to the wall.
Right.
That's how you're going to minimize fat gain and minimize muscle loss during each phase. Both are important.
I want to throw a caveat in there to that, because, of course, we're always going to prioritize, like she said, protein and eating nutrient dense foods and things, right? But if, for example, my reverse got up to 26 to 2,700 calories at the end of last year, and I 100% still had some fun foods in there, right? Like I was eating
Yep.
plenty of sushi and things to fill, because it was so much food, right? It was really high calories. So it was kind of hard for me to get all of that in, which can be the case for some
Or
at the
ice
top
cream,
numbers,
ice
right?
cream or French fries. Like we
Just
don't have
calorie
foods that
dense.
are off limits for us, but we
Right.
absolutely eat a lot of nutrient dense whole foods and fruits and vegetables and meats that aren't processed. Like
Yeah.
we do not demonize also having stuff that's fun foods.
Right. So it's not that we're saying, oh, don't, dirty bulk is bad, go clean, right? Air quotes, clean, do it
Yeah,
clean.
yeah, no.
Like, we don't think that's one way or the other, but it's just saying that narrative that like basically YOLO, right? I'm in a calorie surplus, so I can eat whatever I want. It's important to still prioritize all of the same things you would prioritize at any other point in terms of your nutrition.
It's
And
literally it's the same thing if you're trying to build muscle or lose fat. All the other things are the same
yep.
except for your calories in, calories out. So the only things we're
Yeah.
manipulating is the amount of calories, the amount of food, the portions of food. And
Mhm.
sometimes we might add more walks or more steps during a deficit to increase that calories out without adapting somebody to cardio adaptations, which could downregulate the metabolism. So steps and food, only manipulate those two things and you can see a lot of change.
Yeah. And we talked about this, and it's funny, like Facebook seems to be the platform I typically come across these crazy conversations and interactions in like these mom groups, right? Where they're like, how do I lose weight? And the comments in response as like suggestions, I'm like, holy cow, like sometimes I think, will I have a job forever? And then I read these comments and I'm like, yes, I will, because people still believe the craziest things. But there's always this debate. I just saw it this week about muscle weighs more than fat. And I'm like, well, 1 pound of muscle is 1 pound of fat, right? Like it's all the same in terms of weight, but muscle takes up less space, which is why, and Jess kind of talked about this with clients. Like I might have a client who is a new lifter, right? And we're going through our initial stages of the program, and focusing on building muscle, and they may see the scale not change, but they could have, I mean, I've had somebody stay the same weight and drop 2 pant sizes. Like, so they're seeing those body composition changes, right? Where muscle is obviously increasing and body is obviously coming down because they're seeing a shift in their body composition. Now, does everyone just constantly swap body fat for muscle? No, it depends like how you're training, how you're eating, where you're at in your journey, right? Like a seasoned lifter is not going to reap those benefits anymore, but it's important to understand that concept, right? And that's why, a female who's 150 pounds, who's been lifting weights for 10 years next to somebody who's never picked up a dumbbell that weighs the same, they're going to look very different and possibly have totally different clothing sizes, right? So it's also important to understand that composition in the space that it takes up to, not to mention more muscle means I can eat more food, right? When I'm just like,
So, yeah, muscle is an expensive tissue just to carry around. It costs us a lot of calories. It takes up calories just to carry it. So you'll burn more calories all the time when you're not working out if you can put more muscle on, which will allow you to maintain your fat loss also. Versus playing this game with this yo-yo game where you slow down your metabolism and then you go back to eating normal and you gain it all back. Muscle's like insurance that allows you to burn more calories all the time. And that now we're talking physique, right? When we talk about, yeah, you can keep your fat off. There's also
yeah,
so many health benefits. Like the act of putting on muscle is going to improve your bone density. You're going to be less likely to fall and break a hip when you get old, which if you land in a hospital after a broken bone when you're old, you die, right? Like it'll
yeah,
improve your longevity. Adding muscle improves your insulin sensitivity. So you can actually reverse prediabetes or diabetes through nutrition and strength training. Having muscle on your body is healthy functionally. It is not just an aesthetic meathead goal. It is not just, oh, yeah, I want to look toned in my beach body. It's like, no, it's so important for health and function, especially as we get older and older. And the older you get, the harder it is to put on. So, like, right now is the youngest you're ever going to be. Start right now. Try to put on as much muscle mass as you possibly can. And I'm not saying you can't also, we work with a lot of clients in their 60s and they put on muscle. So you can continue to build it at any age. But the younger you are, the easier it is. So start right now because
yeah.
it's going to hook you up for your future self. And like a lot of people will say like, oh, the food caught up to me. I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted. Like
No,
if you
food
put
caught up
muscle
to
mass
you.
on, yeah, if you
Yeah,
put muscle mass on your body, that will not happen. Your body's going to be working for you like a calorie burning machine. So put on muscle mass.
yeah.
Um,
And that change as you age, right? When people, now when somebody says, oh, I hit 40 and things changed. Well, that's not like your metabolism doesn't shift just because you turn 40. Your metabolism's shifting because you've been dieting and not prioritizing muscle for the last however many years, right? But you do start to lose that muscle mass. They say like typically in your 60s is where you might start to truly see a decline in your metabolism. And that is exactly what Jess is saying. We're losing that muscle mass. We're moving our bodies less over time, right? And obviously some of that's part of life, but you can, like Jess said, we've had clients who are in their 50s and 60s that are strength training, like really strength training for the first time at that age. And they see incredible changes, right? And I have so many women who are
and
like,
they're
I want to see
eating
pictures.
more.
Yeah, I want to see pictures of someone over 50 who's seeing results. And I'm like, sure, I got
I'll
plenty
give
of.
you I'll give you 10 right now that I'm currently coaching. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a woman yesterday and she was like in our check-in, she was like, I don't know, I kind of feel like I should be caring more about my food quality. And she's eating way more fruits and veggies than she ever did before. Like she's eating a good balanced day, but she's like, I've been kind of lackadaisical because I'm in this maintenance phase and I know I can get away with it. And I'm like, how cool. She is over 50 years old and she is eating over 2,200 calories a day. And she's like, well, I'm able to just maintain. So let's come up with a new health goal that motivates me again. And I'm like, can we just celebrate that? Because 2 years ago, you were chronically dieting under 1,600 calories every day, and you're maintaining at 2,200 calories and chilling and
And living
enjoying
life
food at the
peacefully.
beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going on trips. And like, how cool is that? Like, that in itself is a win. It's okay to not always have physique goals. We don't have to push beyond that. Let's just focus on adding more nutrient dense foods a little bit each day so you feel good. Right.
And
But it's
her
really
starting
cool.
to lift muscle and shift away from eat less and move more, she gets to live life like that. But wouldn't you rather do that now in your 20s and 30s or 40s, right? Like start today doing these things. And truly, if we could get every woman to say, fuck dieting, fuck low calorie, and all they did was prioritize their health and their inputs and building as much muscle as possible, I like, you're welcome. I just solved obesity, right? Like I feel like that could change so much for so many people and really improve the way that people feel. And I think that if that was our focus and we were approaching changing our physique and health solutions based on prioritizing and preserving lean body mass and our inputs, like I said, versus just weight loss, people would be in a much better place. But these typical approaches and recommendations are often outdated, for one, advice, and it's just overrated to think that losing weight is the answer to solving the health markers, when most of the time, now I'm not saying there aren't certain scenarios where somebody is like obese and just needs to lose weight to move better and all those things, right? But typically it's not always just losing weight that's improving the health markers. It's that we have healthy habits and we're moving our body more and getting more steps and eating more protein and building muscle, right? Like those markers are the things, and adding muscle are helping to improve those health markers, not just the scale going down. And I think that's often where the disconnect is when it comes to those recommendations too.
I also think that there's a disconnect with the metrics that the doctors have used because they're outdated metrics. So BMI is a very basic measurement to easily spot obesity, right? It is only looking at weight, height, age, gender. The problem with this is if you start to put on muscle mass that is healthy weight, right? You go to the doctor and you're like, oh no, the doctor said I haven't lost any weight. I better get to losing weight. So again, I want to give client examples because these are real things that we work through. So I have a client, she was on thyroid medicine and she was on blood pressure medicine. And we had only been through her reverse at this point. She had not lost any weight. We had actually gained a little bit of weight in terms of muscle mass. She went to her doctor and her doctor was like, what are you doing? Because all of her numbers got better over the course of 4 or 5 months together. That's it. And again, I would say usually to see this drastic results, usually it takes us a year with a client to the point where they're like, wow, everything's improving. My health markers, my body composition, all of it. With under 6 months and only building at this point, she was able to come off of her thyroid and her blood pressure medication only from us focusing on adding more nutrients, more real foods, and muscle.
Yeah. And we have this thing in our heads that like when I lose weight, my blood pressure will be better, my sugars will improve, and all of these things. And it's like, hold on, that's not the right headspace to be in. And that's not the solution that we need to look for. So those are kind of like the reasons that we want to stress the importance of building and preserving lean muscle mass at any age, at any point, just starting as soon as possible, and also like what to expect. But starting this process can be super intimidating for women because they are conditioned to rely on the scale and don't really know what other markers or things to look for in terms of data and moving forward. Because I've absolutely seen women try to do this and they'll say, oh, I can't do carbs, I'm sensitive to them, I gain weight, or every time I start lifting weights, my weight goes up. And I'm like, hold on, like we're looking at all of these things through the wrong lens. So I want to go into like kind of what to expect when you're starting this journey, and then the other data markers that we look at as coaches, and like what you can do on your own too. Because it can be intimidating to shift your mindset to that, and you have to be objective and honestly just relax and have a little bit more fun and not be so obsessed with the data either. But
And it can be hard to be objective too when you're looking at yourself in the
for
mirror,
sure.
or when you're looking at your own pictures, or when you're looking at the scale and you're like, but I've been consistent for a whole week, nothing's happening, and then you just give up, and it's like time out. Sometimes that's why we do what we do. Like, yes, we're not just data, we're not just looking at data and analyzing it, right? We're also giving clients behavioral tools on how to change their habits. But from an objective standpoint, this is what we help our people with, is like, time out, you're eating 600 more calories a day and you haven't gained an inch, and you're stronger and you're healthier and you're sleeping better and your libido has come back and like all this stuff. Like, time out, that's a sign that your metabolism and your health is improving. So cool, the scale is the same and you're eating 600 more calories a day. That is a win. So sometimes having that outside perspective can really help you to look at all the data in the right way.
And one of the reasons that we do what we do and why I love it so much and why we start clients in the place that we do, right? It's not like, okay, lose weight quick so we can post a transformation. We're like, hold on, we're actually going to delay this for a second because we want to, one, establish our baseline, two, build some healthy habits, right, that are going to serve us in the long run, and three, make your body as efficient as we possibly can before we're going back into prioritizing fat loss, being in a calorie deficit, all those things, and making it not restrictive and shitty like most diets are.
By adding muscle, by adding muscle. So like this is one of
Yeah.
my biggest pet peeves, but it's also like a moment where I smirk because I'm like, that's because we help your metabolism. But we've had like probably a handful of clients who quit within their first 3 months. And most people are with us for over a year because they are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can eat more, I feel better, and I'm seeing results. If in the
Yeah.
first couple months you quit, here's what usually happens. These women go through the start of a build phase through with us. So they start to build muscle. They're finally not dieting for the first time in years. They've come to us because they hit a plateau and I'm going to put this in air quotes, nothing works anymore.
Yeah.
So they're not able to lose weight. They sign up with us. We start to have them like focus on their sleep, add protein, add fruits and veggies. And they're like, this isn't hardcore enough. This doesn't work because I'm not losing weight in the first 2 months. And I'm like, okay, but we're building muscle. Look, your inches are going down. This is happening.
I'm
That's
not
happening.
sweating. My workouts are too easy.
Yeah.
What should we do? Yeah.
And then they quit and they go back to whatever stupid diet they were doing before. And suddenly this diet works. This was the best thing for me. And I'm like, that's because we just helped fix your metabolism. Duh.
Yeah, I told
This
you
is
I
not
had to be keto to lose
this
weight.
diet. This diet wasn't working for you before you came to us, but now suddenly it magically works. That's because we just spent 3 months actually putting on muscle and slowing down for a second versus grinding and working harder and harder and harder and eating less and less and less. Like that's why your body's responding to it again. Duh. So anyway, we're setting you up. You are setting yourself up for future success if you can spend time not dieting and building muscle.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's the end of my rant for that one.
no, that's why I love like being a coach and having somebody committed to a program long term through that stage, right? Because so many women, that scale will be a deterrent for them and they'll think, I don't know if this is working. I should do something else. And then they curveball and go right back to their diet and they spend the next 2 years. And honestly, I cannot tell you how many women I've had come to me and they'll start the process and they'll say, I can't do this. This isn't working. They'll come back to me 1 or 2 years later in the same spot. And they're like, okay, I'm just like,
Ready now.
I'm going to give in. I'll listen. I'll do whatever you say. And it's like, damn, you just wasted. Do you know where you could have been in 2 years? And that's not to say like, shame on you, right? Like it's life and you have to come to that
But
point.
they weren't in a headspace to be ready to make actual long-term health changes because they're so insistent on seeing this short-term scale win. So they actually end up like demolishing their own progress and getting in their own way of their health.
Yep, they sabotage and you just go back to doing the same things and dieting and wondering why you're stuck. And Jesse and I both say this a lot. Like, I'll ask a woman, how long have you been dieting? And they're like, oh, my whole life since I was 13, 18, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so if I ask you to just pause on that scale going down, and I'm not even saying it won't like 100%, right? But if you could pause that commitment to the scale for 4 to 6 months, right? Give me that. And then never have to do that again. Are you willing to do that? Right. And if the answer is yes, great. The world is your oyster. If your answer is no, have fun on that hamster wheel. Like nothing is going to change for you. And honestly, spending the time in a calorie deficit, it's crazy because they're like, I have to push harder, right? Because I'm not seeing results. But then it's like, okay, your metabolism adapted. So now you're pushing really hard and putting in all this effort and not seeing results because you're not really in a deficit anymore. You feel restricted, right? Because you're committing to this low calorie thing. So mentally, the exhaustion that comes from dieting is catching up to you, right? So now you're like hardcore 4 or 5 days, and then you're going off the rails Saturday and Sunday, right? And you're in this very toxic cycle yourself. And all that restriction that you feel internally is not even yielding any result for you. So like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that?
And why not sacrifice 4 to 6 months of feeling better and being able to enjoy food to stay the same if you're staying the same anyway? But let's spend that 4 to 6 months healing your body and getting yourself to a place where your body burns more calories all the time and feels better and you sleep better and all the good stuff. But and a lot of times people are like, I'm willing to do it. And then 2 weeks in, they're like, the scale's not changing, right? So like, again, it's like, we got to bring you back to, okay, well, here's the data and here's your long-term goals. Like what's actually most important? Do you want to keep it off? if you want to keep it off, you got to build muscle, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it's why being a coach is so rewarding, because we can be objective, right? We can see all of the stuff outside of the data and know where you need to go. Whereas it's really hard to do for yourself. And that's why, like, I tell everyone, hey, the hardest part of this program up here, when I'm pointing mentally, are the first few weeks, because we have to kind of like break free of these chains. And, as we increase calories, it's so funny. Clients will be like, I don't know how to get my calories in. And I'm like, give me an idea of what your breakfast looks like. And they're like, oh, I eat a 90 calorie yogurt or this with low fat cheese. I'm like, how about some full fat yogurt? How about some, whatever, right? Like, we're so conditioned to eat. Of course, you're having a hard time getting calories, and you have to eat 12 yogurts to the one that I eat every morning, So it's like those little things that you don't even realize that you're doing anymore, that we have to shift away from. And that's a big mental shift to make, and that's okay, right? It takes a second, but those are the things that are going to contribute to building muscle so much more effectively. And you can't start lifting weights and training and building a ton of muscle. And even if you follow everything we say with weightlifting and stay at your 1200 calories, you're just not going to see what you want to see, and you're not going to reap the benefits of that. You have to spend time at maintenance calories, right? Fueling your body and giving your body enough of that energy it needs, so that that next fat loss phase and calorie deficit is really effective. And you're going to look so different after you spend some time building muscle. And that's what's going to like shape your physique and tone and whatever these words that you want to use, right? Like, that's what's going to give you that image that you have in your head, versus just prioritizing weight loss and the scale going down.
So if you are doing the right inputs, right? So right inputs, I will remind you, 3 to 5 heavy lifts a week, you're progressively overloading. You're not just doing circuits and high intensity workouts to try to break a sweat. We're putting stressors on our big muscle groups. You're eating enough protein. So minimum 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, up to 1 gram per pound of body weight daily. And you're eating whole foods, and you're doing this stuff really consistently, and you're like, I don't know, the scale's not moving. Am I doing the right things? Don't stop. Okay, guys, if your inches are the same, sometimes they might actually be less, but if your inches are the same and you're eating more and more and still doing these things, you are likely putting on muscle mass. So keep going. And we've had a lot of clients who are like, I don't get it. I fit into these pants. I fit in when I was 30 pounds lighter, but I'm only 15 pounds lighter. And I'm like, muscle, ding, ding, ding. Like, you're
Congrats.
healthier.
Welcome.
You're healthier now. You're the same size that you were 30 pounds lighter, but you're actually healthier than you were then. So
Yeah.
that is a win. So to wrap it up, is your ideal fit body heavier than you think? Yeah, probably, because you need to add some muscle.
Yeah. So outside of the scale, take measurements. Our clients typically would do like a chest, a waist, a hip, right around the largest part of your glutes, and then a thigh measurement. Those are pretty reliable for markers that we use for measurements, but also take pictures and see how your clothes fit, if they fit any differently. And then also use the other markers, especially when you're going through a time of adding calories and you're a little bit unsure of the direction that you're going. Are you sleeping better? Is your energy improving? Your libido? What about bloating? Is that getting better? And a caveat to that is, if you've been spending a lot of time lower calorie, as you add them, it may take a second. It may be like a little bit worse before it gets better for a week, because your body's just not used to digesting that much food, right? So you have to look at those markers, zoom out, and stop, making changes every few days or even every week, and just be consistent with those inputs. And really, if you prioritize health first, building muscle second, fat loss doesn't even have to be a focus. It's just going to happen, versus prioritizing weight loss and completely neglecting health and muscle, which is typically the case. You're going to see such a huge difference in your results, and you're going to see them pretty quickly, especially if you've been spending a lot of time dieting. So that's really it. Build muscle, and 3000%, your ideal body is likely much heavier than you think. Don't get caught up in, this is what I used to look like, a pre-pregnancy, I weighed this, because so often clients come to us in that headspace and they leave us 10 pounds heavier than they thought they would. And they're like, wow, I feel better than I ever did. Right. And that's the result of making those shifts. But I think if we really focus on our inputs over the scale and just prioritizing a smaller version of ourselves, everyone will be happier, and they'll all eat lots of food and carbs and do all of the things that we want to do and feel good doing them. So I think that's it, right? Did we cover all of our bases here?
Yeah, I think so. We can do a
Well,
whole other episode on you and I and our lightest versus our healthiest. Because I think that
Yeah,
that would be I think it would put stuff in perspective when people see how much you weigh. I bet they always, and same for me, they always underestimate what I actually weigh because of all my muscle.
yeah,
But since I've added all that muscle over the course of years, I can eat so much more. I don't gain weight back every time I go on a vacation. Like my body works for me now versus when I was at what was my lightest. And at the time I thought was healthy and it just wasn't.
yeah, and that's a great example. I mean, I thought I was healthy in bodybuilding, and Lord knows I'm so much further past that. So that is it. Your ideal body weighs heavier than you think. So we hope that was helpful, and we will see you guys next time.
All right. Bye guys.